Well, welcome back to RV and Up to the Minute. I am Keith. I'm really excited today. I get to hang out with one of my favorite reps, and he's hearing that right now live. And Jordan Struble, who is from Grand Design, has been there just about since the very beginning, and he's been a rep. I've worked with him as a salesperson. I've worked with him as a content manager, and now again as sales. Welcome, Jordan. Thanks for joining us here on RV and Up to the Minute.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. So tell us a little bit about how you ended up with Grand Design, because I think our listeners would like to know that. And then let's kind of talk about what Grand Design's all about. What makes them special?
Perfect. Well, thanks again. Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. So you never know who's going to come into your life at different times. And I used to work for Dutchman, another great company here in the industry. You guys carry those products on your lots as well.
The Voltage.
The Voltage, great product. Yeah. And so, I had just gotten into the RV industry on the wholesale side after working retail for a couple of years after college, and had a chance to meet Don Clark. He was the president of Dutchman at the time, and interviews me, hires me. And the funny part about it is he seemed really relaxed. Great guy, very personable. The guy that you see today, and he's interviewing me, and seemed really relaxed. And they hire me. Well, I find out about a week later he had just given notice that he was going to be taking a leave for about a year or so.
Wow.
Yeah, and so turns out he was sitting out to then put together Grand Design.
Right.
And so,
which is a great story.
Yeah,
because not just him, but the owners all of Grand Design all have key history in the RV business, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that in a minute. So what happened then with you?
So fast forward, I'm working at Dutchman for about a year and a half, and I call up Mark Hauser, who you know very well, and asked me to come and would you like to watch a football game with us? We're going to go to Don's Lake House. Well, they had already started Grand Design, after that year of sitting out of the RV industry, and we go and we sit down and we're talking, we're kind of hanging out, thinking that we're just going to be talking football, and turns into sort of an interview. Round two. And they all look at each other and they say, well, I want to hire him. And this is Bill Finnick, this Mark Hauser, and Don Clark, and all of a sudden the light bulb turns on that, oh my gosh, this is turned into an interview. I thought I was just watching a football game.
Watching football and hanging out with guys I like.
7 years later, here we are with Grand Design. Now we have, 6 brands, built an amazing company, and it's been a really fun journey. My actual employee number, I think, is 54.
Yeah.
And we'll get into some of those stats here in a minute.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I love the fact that that because you've been a rep for how many years prior to jumping in the pool with Grand Design?
About 2 years before.
Yeah. So, and then you sold before that.
I did.
Yeah. So you come from the RV biz. And so what's different, before we talk about what's different about Grand Design, what's different about being an RV rep? So if you're listening, Jordan actually represents Grand Design for a number of markets, and the Blue Dog organization, pretty much all those stores, the 12 stores. And by the way, we want to thank Blue Dog RV, our sponsor. They all are kind of under the Grand Design umbrella, but we don't have Grand Design at all our stores. So talk about how that works, what stores you represent, and then what you think separates Grand Design right now, why it's growing so fast.
Perfect. Yeah. So I currently cover about 7 states on the West for the Solitude and Momentum product, the 2 Highline, full profile fifth wheels.
And they started with Solitude, right? That was the
Solitude
first
was number
product?
1.
Okay.
Yep.
So you were one of the first reps in this area for Solitude, and that's all they made.
It's actually the very first rep ever hired at Grand Design.
Wow.
And I'm still here.
45. Employee 45?
54.
54. Okay.
54.
That's cool.
So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So the 7 states on the West, Solitude and Momentum product. We have you guys at virtually every store, with the exception of, I believe, 3 of your stores.
Right. Which we would have you at those stores if you can pull any strings.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a whole nother conversation. There's already dealers in those markets. Right. But so what's the journey been like? What's different between selling the product as a salesperson, meeting customers all the time, and now you're dealing with salespeople like me in training? And I learned Grand Design from you way back in the 2014, I think, 15. when they launched?
Maybe even earlier.
Earlier? When did they launch? Grand Design start?
Technically, it started 2011. Started
we
shipping
signed
product
up. Okay.
late 12, early 13.
Well, I'm almost 58 now, so I'm losing track of time. But yeah, so Jordan was like one of the guys who took me out, and yeah, I'm having some flashbacks right now in my mind. And I think I learned about momentum and solitude from you. And I got to tell you, just from my perspective, impressed from the very get-go. So what was it like changing from sales to being a rep to dealers and to train salespeople?
You know what? It's a totally different world.
It is.
You know, from retail to wholesale, it's important to know both.
Right.
Having that knowledge of the retail has definitely given us more empathy, more just understanding of how the overall business works.
Right.
But more juggling, you know, a
Right.
lot more travel. But it's been a blast. We get to work with the retail salespeople to truly
Right.
help them now.
Right.
And so that part's fun.
Well, and I think one of the challenges in any industry is making sure that salespeople represent the product and understand, have answers. And then I know what's cool about when I was selling before, I could call you up and get an answer. And many times you were talking to my customers, setting them at ease, answering some of their questions. And I think that's why this podcast is important, because people need to understand they're not just dealing with salespeople. Sometimes salespeople are dealing with reps. The reps help answer our questions for them.
Right.
And that's amazing. So, so Blue Dog, what's it been like? Because we were way smaller when you started as a rep. So what's that relationship maybe look like over the period of time? And obviously you get to come to a lot of our shows. We're at a Blue Dog RV show right now up in Post Falls. So what's that been like, the relationship with Blue Dog and just the growth in the dealer base for you?
You know, it's been special to see the growth because, you know, without a great dealer, without great salespeople, and without the right products, none of it works. So it takes all of those components to really impact the business. And you guys have done a really great job in the Northwest. It's been fun to see you expand into California,
Right.
you know, Las Vegas. So, you know, it's been great to be part of that growth. Your story is a lot similar, you know, very similar to ours.
Right.
You know, you have an owner that just saw a better way of doing business and really wanted to do something special for himself. And he's just created a ton of jobs, you know, for some great people up here.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you right away before we get too far into this conversation is, what do you think is separating Grand Design? What makes it special? And I know you talk about it all the time. We've talked about it. But we have listeners. What would you say to them makes Grand Design special? Because it really is exploding on the industry. I mean, the customer satisfaction numbers are off the charts, and you were going to share some numbers today. But what really is separating them, in your opinion, being from the inside looking out?
You know what? I would say we lead everything from the service side.
Okay.
From dealers that we're going to sign, a floor plan that we're going to build, everything stems from service. You know, there's a very special guy that works for us. His name is Jerry McCarthy. He's our vice president of service, parts, operations, and he's just involved in every aspect. And so I think when you get away from the true service of it, you can make a good looking product, you can make a hot selling floor plan, but if you're not going to stand behind it and make sure that you're doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, you just start to get away from who you want to be. And, you know, probably one of the most special things that we're still doing is we're hiring young, you know, innovative people that are willing and wanting to make the change. I think in the RV business, you know, a lot of us get very complacent and comfortable because it's working. Our guys are never comfortable. We say that we're scared every single day, and we're always trying to pursue doing something better. And I'll give you an example. You know, even in like our Momentum toy haulers, you know, we just launched the new Momentum travel trailer.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Thank you. We've been working on it for a while, and one of the most special things about that product is just the way that we can fully insulate and enclose the entire floor, which nobody's doing in a travel trailer toy hauler. And that comes from a 36-year-old GM that, again, just wants to make a better product and make those proper changes.
And I think you guys have innovated. You know, you did that with the floors. I think you had a little bit of competition when you did floors in the fifth wheels. But do you have any competition in the travel trailers having an insulated floor? That's huge, right?
It is huge. And it all stemmed actually from our fifth wheels first. And then when we go to launch the trailers, you know, the other thing too is just our guys communicate really well together amongst the different product lines. So they'll take ideas, and you'll see, you know, those same features consistent through all the brands. We were talking yesterday in some training about the golden thread of consistency. And once we get customers really looking at our product and we're pitching on those key features, it's just going to be consistent through the product line.
Right. And I think when we get back from the break here, Jordan, I want to talk about the golden thread of consistency, something I think you had part in, right? That kind of phrase.
Yeah, I'll take credit.
Yeah, take credit. And it's kind of cool to see how that goes through every single product line.
Right.
So when we get back from the break, Jordan's going to kind of tell us one of the key things that I think makes Grand Design special, and there's lots of them. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back after the break, and we just appreciate our sponsor, Blue Dog RV, and appreciate you listening in, and Jordan for being with us. We will be right back, so stay with us. Well, that's our break. And again, we want to thank you for listening in, as well as Blue Dog RV for being our sponsor. Again, I have Jordan Struble with me from Grand Design. He is the rep for, he shared just moments ago, about 7 states up in the Northwest. And he's going to talk to us about a very important topic, and that's the golden thread of what?
Consistency.
Consistency. I love that. So talk about that a little bit, Jordan.
Yeah, you know, our founders, when they created the company, there were just so many things that they wanted to do differently. Number one, a PDI, a full pre-delivery inspection on every single unit that we build.
And that's a term we throw around all the time. It's we're always telling customers it gets a PDI, but what that means is that someone's actually checking the systems, because just because they built it doesn't mean, and they inspected it all along the way, right? It doesn't mean that someone else doesn't come along with fresh eyes that does it every day, knows that it's done right, it's ready for a dealer to take, in your instance, or when we do it at a store, it's for a customer to take. So talk just a little bit about what that means, that thread.
Well, now we're doing about a 300-point inspection on those units. So we're just checking systems, we're backfilling tanks, we're checking all of the electrical, we're doing a final fit and finish, you know, a real thorough look before they ship out from Indiana. We don't want the dealers to be the last, 20% of the production line.
Right. And you innovated. You shared yesterday in the training that you guys now have kind of a new system in place. So there isn't a chance that a unit leaves with, because you guys use tape and they mark stuff so that the teams can come in and fix those things.
Right.
Now you have this new system. Is that something we can talk about here on the podcast?
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So talk about that.
So they actually have tough pads.
Okay.
In the line, and so they can report any kind of issues and then go back and fix it on the line.
Right.
The other neat part too is if there is a unit that gets pulled out and goes to what we call the sick bay,
right,
it can't just leave. It can't hit the scales. It can't leave until everything's checked off in real time on these tough pads. So it's just a good checks and balance for us. As many units as we're building, we just want to stay on top of it and make sure that what we're putting out is a product we can stand behind and be proud of.
So one thread, PDI, what's some other golden threads of consistency?
The other thing that you're going to see throughout our brands is no heat registers on the floor.
Oh, I love that.
I love it too. It's probably one of my favorite things to talk about.
I don't think I ever miss that when I'm sharing that, even doing a video. I always like to talk about that. So why is that so important?
You're coming in and out of the campground. You're going and enjoying the beautiful beaches that we have on the west. There's so much you can be bringing back inside the coach. And the worst thing that can happen is dirt, dog hair, popcorn, everything else that falls down in those registers.
Right.
You don't have to worry about it in our coach. The other thing too is, and I might have shared this yesterday, but I was camping in a competitor's rig a couple months back, and I go to step out of the shower, and they always put the registers in the worst place.
Right.
My heel goes right through it. The plastic goes cracking down into the register. Again, you're not going to have to worry about that sort of thing with us. And Keith, you're a big guy. I weigh about 230.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, and so
I stepped on those vents in trailers. like a used travel trailer. Literally, I think if I remember right, it was like an older Dutchman. Remember the old Dutchmans from the '90s, and bent the vent. Of course, my last name is Bennett, so I guess it was my namesake, so I bent it. But anyway, so they don't have to worry about stepping on a vent. So where are the vents now then?
The vents are going to come out of the sidewalls in the bathroom, in the bedroom. If there's an island, it's going to come out, and that's the other thing too. The heat's going to blow out versus immediately up. Right. So it's functional. It's going to keep your floor more solid. It's just a great feature you're going to find in every brand.
It's awesome. So how many threads are there when you talk about the golden threads of consistency?
You know what? It's kind of evolved a little bit.
Oh,
I think initially there was probably about 5. It was the registers, it's the PDI, it's the fact that anytime we cut into a sidewall, we frame it in aluminum, whether it's a window, baggage door, putting that structure back.
That's huge because most windows were like a pinch window, and so it's pinching on a Luan and fiberglass with foam core in it, and there's nothing for it to grab, so those windows shake going down the highways, and what do eventually?
Eventually they leak.
Yeah.
You get water in that laminated sidewall, and that's the last thing that you want to happen in one of these.
And you're doing that in everything, right?
Everything.
You cut a hole out where there's a window, and then you put in the framing.
Yeah, with the exception of our new entry level, Transcend product.
Right, and it's wood framed.
It's wood framed.
So it's a different type of construction technology.
Correct.
Yeah. So other threads besides that, the windows, which is great. You shared yesterday about air. Is that a part of the golden thread of consistency, how you're doing your roof airs?
Yeah, our racetrack ducting system. That would be another thread of consistency. You're just going to get better flow, 23% better airflow than our competition.
Right.
So
that's awesome. So is there any other ones that come to mind of the golden thread of consistency?
Yeah, the probably the last one that I would talk about today would be the fact that we cover everything that we build for full-time living.
Wow, that's... Yeah, if you've sold or you've been around the RV industry, most manufacturers would void their warranty if someone was going to stay in it full time, and you don't do that with any product.
Not even our Transcend, our new Explorer product, a Momentum trailer, Solitude, you name it, every brand. And what's special about it is, are most of these customers going to be living in a Transcend or an Imagine maybe? Maybe not. But we're building with the expectation that someone's going to use it every day of the year. So we take that into consideration when we're building new floor plans, when we're, setting out to create something new. We're building with that expectation of someone living in it. And that person's going to use it different than your average camper.
That's awesome. Well, we haven't talked much about Solitude or Momentum, but before we do that, talk a little bit about the history of the owners of Grand Design, because you already talked about one that you worked with at Dutchman, but that's not the end of the story. They have some huge history in the industry, and there's some RVs that most people are probably pretty familiar with that they designed for another manufacturer. So talk about what they brought into Grand Design and what their history.
Sure. Well, in most things, but especially in the RV business, it's all about relationships.
Absolutely.
We have a great relationship.
Yep.
Grand Design and the relationship with Blue Dog RV is super special. Well, our 3 founders, Ron Finnick, Bill Finnick, and Don Clark, they've been friends for a long, long time. And Ron and Bill are brothers. They all were at Coachman back in the day, and they were reps. So they had some retail experience. They've had the wholesale rep experience. Right. You fast forward, in Keystone's infancy, they were asked to come over, and they were given ownership. I believe they were 3 of 6 owners, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's true.
And they built an amazing company. Keystone's still one of the greatest companies in the business.
Right.
You guys carry some of their brands as well.
Right. It's a good product.
Absolutely. And so they built it up, and you might have heard of a product called the Montana.
Right.
We're not afraid to talk about it. It's a great fifth wheel. And
in the early twos, I think it was the #1 selling fifth wheel in the industry and broke records, and they had part in that.
They did. Actually, It's funny. We usually joke around and say that Ron Finnick used to put it on his business card. Hey, I'm Ron Finnick. I created the Montana. That was like his claim to fame there for a bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but amazing guys. And, once they built Keystone up, Thor,
right,
who is kind of like General Motors is in the automotive business, right. Thor is in the RV business, owns some pretty major companies.
Yep.
Airstream, the really cool old retro trailers.
Right.
Dutchman, Heartland, KZ,
right.
Keystone.
Right.
They own a lot of different companies now in our business. Well, fast forward, they built it up. They sold to Thor.
Right.
And they didn't just leave. They stayed on to be presidents of different Thor-owned companies.
Right.
And this part's pretty sweet. So Ron Finnick stayed on to be the president of Keystone.
Okay.
Bill Finnick went to be the president of Damon Motorhomes.
Okay.
And then Don Clark went to be the president of Dutchman.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit more, long story short as I can make it.
Right.
Ron Finnick then was given the opportunity to become the president of all of Thor.
Wow.
So pretty
big position.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Huge position. Yeah.
So people usually ask me though, and they ask them as well, and you may have seen some videos on it, but pretty high power positions in our industry, extremely influential. Why would they leave?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. In fact, it's the first thing that I thought of because I had talked about those guys at Keystone and been familiar with Damon, sold Damon, know that story. Dutchman, the Voltage. So why?
Well,
start from scratch.
I think if you ask them, they'd say if it was all about the money, it would never be enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And they just really wanted to leave a legacy. They wanted to make something that was truly theirs. Yeah. After about 2008, 9, 10, our industry had changed.
Yeah, it did.
Dealers, some dealers had, maybe gone out of business, some different product lines. It was a good time to clean things up and refocus in on the business and the product. Well, they wanted to do things differently when they were running these Thor-owned companies. But when you're so big, it's hard to make those changes quickly.
Absolutely.
So they were given two choices. One, try to come out with another company within Thor's umbrella.
Right.
Or B, leave and do their own thing. They chose the latter, and I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, so talk about the numbers real quick before we go to break. How big now is Grand Design? Because then it started with one line, Solitude, then I think Momentum was released very shortly after that. Still a fifth wheel. And then now, what is it, 7 years later? Do I have the math right?
Yeah, we're in year 7.
Yeah, year 7. So talk about the growth of Grand Design, because you already talked about how many product lines in our introduction, but how big is it now? How many dealers in the United States?
Well, I believe we're up to about 150 dealers.
Wow.
Which is still pretty small in comparison to some other manufacturers.
Right.
We actually did over $1 billion in sales last year.
That's just a little bit.
So
yeah, lots of people love Grand Design.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So any other numbers that step out? What about, I see some crazy customer satisfaction numbers. Talk about that a little bit. Where do they rank?
Yeah, so there's a DSI award that's given out, and it's a pretty prestigious award. It's voted on by the dealers.
Okay.
It's based off of parts and service. It's based off on desire to replace or to, to buy another product. Would you be willing or wanting to buy another Grand Design product?
So that's customers, yeah.
Yep. And then some sales are involved in there as well.
Okay.
But every year and every new brand, we are always at the very top of this award.
It's awesome.
So it's pretty special. But
yeah, well, I had the privilege of going back to the factory, a couple of years ago, and I think that's the thing that stuck out the most. I think to get those kind of awards and have that kind of satisfaction, and to know that you're servicing customers, which we'll talk about after the break, that's special, especially if you've been in and around the industry, because the end user are the ones that really make us successful, make businesses grow, and make manufacturers successful. So when we get back from the break, I'd love to talk just a little bit more about what there's some doing. We even have mobile service. So you guys stay tuned, and we'll be right back, and we'll wrap this up with a conversation about 2 products and the things that they're doing to service rigs across the United States, and maybe even a little bit about rallies. Well, thank you for staying with us. That's the break. And I am with Jordan Struble, our rep for Solitude and Momentum, and one of the Grand Design guys who's been there since the very beginning, out talking product with customers at shows, helping salespeople learn, as well as customers' satisfaction, really through 7 states. You're involved in pretty much all the situations that arrive, right, with service?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, a lot of times we're the first phone call that they make.
Yeah, to the rep. So they get your card and stuff at shows, like they have my card when I was selling. And so we were talking in the break just a little bit off the mic that you were talking about just kind of the diversity, the price points and all that stuff of what you really feel like Grand Design's done a really good job. So to talk about that before we talk about service.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about is not cloning our products.
Okay.
Meaning coming out with just another product, excuse me, in the same price point,
right,
and putting it on another dealer's lot. We want to make sure that if we have new features or new floor plans, that we're focusing all of the attention into that specific brand. Now, there are customers that maybe don't want to be 40 feet long, or maybe they don't quite want to maybe spend X amount of dollars. So what we've done, and we've really focused on probably the most this last year, is backfilling or creating a price point in between, say, a Reflection and a Solitude, called a Solitude S-Class.
Right. Well, so you have the Solitude S-Class, and then there's the 150 series in Reflection, and it kind of goes all the way down through the product lines, right?
Absolutely. Momentum, the G-Class is new as well. So
now it makes it a little harder for us to learn the product, and you definitely have to, the consumer has to understand that every time you make a change and try to get things shorter, sometimes there's some compromises.
Sure. And
we also, the price point usually changes, right? It's usually a lower, like the S series is less expensive than the Solitude. So talk just a little bit, but yet you still have some amazing floor plans. So what would really change in a Solitude compared to an S series?
Sure. Well, we don't want to jeopardize quality.
Right.
We don't want to jeopardize insulation and structure.
Right.
So the shell of it essentially is the same.
Right.
Drop frame chassis, wide body, full profile. But what you'd notice in an S-Class is, you might have, electric auto level versus hydraulic.
Right.
What's important to customers is that it's still auto level.
Right.
Does it matter hydraulic versus electric?
Right.
I don't know. That's up to the customer. But windows, you'll notice they're traditional framed windows versus frameless. Refrigerator might be a little bit smaller.
Right.
Really some bolt-on type of option features, to your point, to get that price point down a little
Which is true in every product line out there.
Sure.
I mean, you would look at any other manufacturer and you could see that they'll have a number of levels. I have that on almost all the other products. And maybe Grand Design's leading that because they've seen other people start to do that. But the important thing is you get some different floor plans and you have an option that maybe now is affordable. So if someone really wants a Solitude over a Reflection, now the S series makes that possible. That's what I've seen. So what else in Grand Design is like that is really helping them be more diversified and giving them more people? And I think you should tell why it's important not to have two brands, like a Fusion and it's a Fusion and a Raptor. Yeah, sure. For Keystone, which I sold for years. They're pretty identical products, and they can be in two different dealerships across town. Right. And Grand Design doesn't have that.
Right. Well, one of the things that Don Clark likes to talk about is, when they set out to create Grand Design, they never wanted to be the biggest, but they wanted to be the best. Okay. And I think when you start cloning products and putting products on other dealers' lot, you only have so many people that work for you, and we try to hire the best. Right. And I think we absolutely have. Right. You start to stretch service a little bit further. Right. And you're trying to focus all of your attention on more dealers. Right. If anything, it's more of the Jerry Maguire approach. We wanted less, but we wanted the best.
Which is a great illustration.
Yeah, and the biggest testimony that we have to our company and our products are the dealers' lots that we're on. And Blue Dog RV, there's nowhere else we'd rather be. And so we can really rally behind the dealer and really invest all of our time and efforts within that one dealer in one market.
So there's a lot to talk out there about service, right? I just was on TV recently in our local market, and that was one of the questions. I told them, what do you want to ask us, right? What do you want to know? So service is so crucial because when you own a rig, if it's a Mercedes-Benz or if it's a RV, like Imagine, you need to be able to find service. You need to be able to get parts. And the RV industry has always kind of been a little notorious for some parts not being quickly, readily available like it is in the auto industry. Talk about how Grand Design's kind of dealt with some of that stuff and what you guys are doing, which I think should be one of those things that we talk about.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you know, a lot of these customers, they are going full time.
Right.
Like we said earlier, we're covering the warranty. They know that. So
Right.
they are spending more time. Well, not everybody has a truck, or they like to get out into some remote areas. So
Right.
number one, we're going to authorize for mobile repair in those cases that it's needing covered.
Yeah, they're full-time, living in an RV park. It's almost near to impossible for them to figure out how to go and park it at an RV store.
Right.
And Grand Design is paying for mobile service in those situations. That's huge. Yeah.
The other thing that we're doing too is we launched a pilot program about 2 years ago now,
Right.
where we actually have full-time employees that are mobile techs that are out there driving in a Grand Design, truck. They have a big trailer,
That has a bunch of
equipment
and parts in it. Yeah,
Oh
I've seen
yeah,
it.
welding machines
Yeah.
and generators and all kinds of stuff. And what they're doing is they're going around and they're working with the dealers.
Right.
They're helping them be more efficient, show them the way that we do it on the manufacturing side to help the dealers.
Right.
And then when they're out there, what we can do is we can actually ship parts in cases where, a dealer needs help with the customer, or there's a customer in a remote area. We'll actually
Right.
send our techs out to some of those customers.
Right.
Yesterday, when we were up there in Pasco,
Right.
you got to meet Chris,
Yeah.
who was a service manager for a long time, and he was there, and luckily he was able to help your service department with an issue yesterday as well.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
and I
pretty
met
sweet.
Chris actually at the Grand Design Rally in Redding, California that we hosted. And the interesting thing about it was not only was he fixing things at the rally where all these Grand Design people rally, he also came to our Redding store and dealt with a couple issues there. And then shortly after that, when he was up at the rally in the Kennewick Pasco area, he came to help one of our techs that works at the Kennewick shop and to show him how to fix something, that Chris would know how to do. So that's amazing. So Grand Design is going above and beyond.
And when we're always trying to be better too.
Right.
And there's something else new that just launched. A lot of times when customers are waiting for their coaches and service, it's
Right.
usually parts related.
Okay.
You're shipping all these parts from Indiana, takes a few days. If it's, bigger parts you're having to ship freight. We just struck a deal with NTP,
Right.
which is a huge distributor of parts to all the dealerships.
Right.
And for you guys being out west, it's just going to shorten the lead times for those parts.
Yep.
And they can now ship directly. So again, we're always trying to be cutting edge and do something different.
Right.
And Ron, Don, Bill, they never stop being innovative.
Well, there is so much that we could talk about, Jordan. I just noticed that we're running out of time. But the cool thing is that you're taking the time here at the Sale Hub here in Post Falls to talk with us here on RV and Up to the Minute. And we appreciate you taking the time. Is there any last thing that you wanted to say about your two products before we say goodbye about Solitude and Momentum? Because that's what you represent. That is really something that jumps out at you right now that you would want the listeners to know about your products this year. We talked about the S Series, obviously, but Momentum travel trailers. What would jump out at you?
Well, I guess it'd be more of a request
Okay.
from the listeners.
Awesome.
And it would be to please don't stop giving us feedback.
Okay.
Please let us know if there's something that we're missing. Again, we're scared every day. We go where the customer leads us, not where other customers have been, or where
Right.
other manufacturers have been, rather. So, keep bringing us that great feedback. Send us the great ideas on Facebook.
Right.
And, just stay tuned. We got more exciting stuff to come.
So you can find out about Grand Design from our sponsor, Blue Dog RV at BlueDogRV.com. They can also go to, there's Facebook sites for Grand Design, right?
Yep.
And then there's rally sites, right? Because they do these Grand Design rallies.
Yeah, and I would encourage the customers to come out to the rallies. There's some pretty special ones. We just had the Vegas one,
Right.
where we had about 300 people at it.
Right.
Don Clark made a surprise visit, which a lot of people had seen.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's special, but it's a great way to share ideas, meet other fellow Grand Design owners, and it's just a great time.
Well, they're really happy. I've had a chance to speak at 2 rallies, and at both rallies, I asked how many people had actually had to have something serviced on their Grand Design, and a number of hands went up, and I said, how many people just still absolutely love Grand Design? And they cheered.
They do.
So it's because of the service. It doesn't mean that things don't need to be repaired, but that it's the service that Grand Design is providing both through their dealers and through the company. So, Jordan, thanks so much for joining me on RV and Up to the Minute. Man, I learned some stuff today. I learned some stuff yesterday. Got to videotape your training, so thank you so much. And if you'd like to meet Jordan Struble and you're around the Post Falls area on April 12th and 13th, he's going to be around the Greyhound Event Center. So thanks, Jordan, for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And hope to see you again soon in the Tri-Cities where I'm working in Kennewick, Washington.
Always a pleasure.